Welcome back to Eyes on Israel. Eyes on Israel is powered by Israel 365. Make sure to go to Israel365.com and check out everything they have to offer there. Products, news, information, teachings from Israel. Go to Israel365news.com for updated news and analysis straight out of the Holy Land from a biblical perspective. And be sure to check out my weekly podcast, the Shoulder to Shoulder podcast, available on all podcast platforms. Last week, on Eyes on Israel, we discussed the phenomenon we are witnessing of a surge in worldwide support for Israel coming from the populist nationalist right. From Bolsonaro supporters in Brazil to Javier Milei in Argentina, to Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, and Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, who was recently elected, among others around the world, there appears to be a new coalition of support for Israel that is taking shape. This development is happening alongside an increasingly disturbing trajectory in the relationship between the United States administration and the State of Israel. The left, who are not liberals, have taken over much of the Democratic Party and have captured the hearts and minds of far too many of the younger generation in America. For Israel, this means that support is in peril. As I said on last week's show, in my opinion, the left's abandonment of Israel was always inevitable. The State of Israel, in my opinion, is simply incompatible with their worldview. Who does and who does not support Israel is changing. And change of this sort usually means that no one knows for sure how things will look going forward. Joining me now to help us understand all of this is Yoram Hazony. Yoram Hazony is an Israeli philosopher, political theorist, and author. His latest book, Conservatism, A Rediscovery, is invigorating conservative political thought globally. He serves as chairman of the Edmund Burke Foundation and president of the Herzl Institute, and is a leading proponent of the national conservatism movement. His previous book, The Virtue of Nationalism, a book that absolutely blew my mind, won the Intercollegiate Studies Institute's Conservative Book of the Year Award in 2019. He lives in Jerusalem with his wife and children. Welcome to Eyes on Israel, Yoram Hazony. So Yoram, I teed you up with this discussion of what we're seeing worldwide with this kind of shift in who does and who does not support Israel. What do you make of the current moment we're in politically in terms of Israel? Chuck Schumer the other day said that Israel can't afford to be isolated, kind of threatening that we are. How do you see the lay of the land?
Well, I think you correctly described it before. There's after World War II, we had 60 or 70 years during which post-war liberalism was certainly pro-Israel in a very general sense. It doesn't mean every liberal supported Israel, but in a general sense, the idea that the Jews deserved self-determination and a state after World War II did capture liberal minds. But all of this has changed dramatically after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We've seen a kind of a worldwide liberalism, liberal internationalism, the New World Order, for about a generation. And you're right to say that it's less and less liberal. In the last few years, this liberal internationalism has become closer to being a revolutionary movement. It's much closer to a neo-Marxist internationalism. At the same time, we have pushback against it in almost every democratic country. There is a nationalist conservative camp which stands first of all for the independence of nations. You know, in the old days, independence of nations sounded like a liberal idea. Today, liberalism is globalism, and so you're right that Israel, as really the original independent national state, going back to the Hebrew Bible, to the Tanakh, is a model and a light to the nations, especially on the nationalist right.
Yeah, so maybe Israelis need a little more self-awareness, because most Israelis don't think of themselves as aligned with the nationalist right worldwide. But if you think about what Israel is, that it's a nation state built on an identity that has its roots in ancient history and in the Bible, and cares deeply and is in favor of preserving that national identity even through laws that enshrine our Judaism and Jewish tradition into parts of the law in Israel. But at the same time, Israelis don't necessarily see themselves, or at least a lot of the Israelis I know, as having an affinity with the nationalist right worldwide, while that same nationalist right looks at Israel as a kind of beacon. So what are Israelis missing?
Yeah, Israelis just don't think about the world as much as the world thinks about Israel, and so I think you're right that there is a certain lack of familiarity, but I think that it's already been quite a few years that it's been obvious that Republicans in the United States and conservatives in Britain and so on are, and the same, through much of Europe, are much more reliable in not only in their support of Israel, but in their support of Jews and their defense of Jews. We have to remember that the increasing radicalism of the left has always been tied to kind of a worldwide revolution. In the late 1960s, they talked about the third world liberation, and third world liberation has always been liberation of Africa and South America and Asia from the West, from the whites. Now, it may be that Jews don't necessarily think of themselves in that way, but this neo-Marxist movement sees the Jews as colonialists, as settlers, as whites, and so whether we like it or not, that's where the great wave of anti-Semitism in the world is right now. There obviously are anti-Semites on the political right, but the anti-Semitism of the left is 2 or 3 orders of magnitude more influential. And we see that in the Democratic Party, which is simply less and less reliable as a bulwark, not only for Israel, but for Jews.
So what do you make of Jews in America? According to Pew Research polling after the 2020 election, 72% of Jews in America voted for Joe Biden. And if you take out Orthodox Jews, who are only 9% of the Jewish population in the U.S., then it's about 80% of the remainder voted for Joe Biden, whereas Orthodox Jews, who are, again, a small percentage, overwhelmingly to the tune of 80% as well, voted for Donald Trump. And now you have all these Jews on the, all these progressive Jews who are kind of thrown into political turmoil. What do you make of what they're going through as we kind of sit on the sidelines and watch them try to find a political home?
Well, I don't enjoy the suffering of anyone, and certainly not of any Jewish community. But the Orthodox Jewish community and the Zionist Jewish community, which have been much further to the right for decades than most Jews in America. I think that we on the right have been saying the same thing for most of my lifetime, which is that the interests of the Jewish people simply cannot be reconciled with this movement to worldwide revolution, which is stronger on the left with every passing year. And it looks like we've now passed the watershed. If you look at Biden's struggle to try to win the neo-Marxist vote and the Muslim supremacist vote, which is not all Muslims, but a significant proportion of Muslims in America are with the neo-Marxist left, and they want to see revolution in Israel, like they want to see revolution in America. Many of them support the Hamas, and Biden is, has no choice. He has to pander to this Muslim supremacist and neo-Marxist vote in his party. I kind of feel sorry for him, but it's very difficult for liberal Jews, who are the majority in America, to recognize that the Democratic Party is hostile, increasingly hostile, not just to Israel, but to liberal Jews themselves, who are going to increasingly find that they have no place in the Democratic Party, just as they have no place, at Harvard University.
Yeah, and for me, I just find myself having so many conversations with Jewish friends who lean to the left, and just trying to get them to open their eyes and see that the political camps have changed, and the natural home for us is on the right, and that's where we're going to find respect and relationships that really bolster the Israel-U.S. relationship in America, especially. Yoram, we just have about 30 seconds left. Could you just say a few words about your new book? If you could do that in 30 seconds. If not, we'll have to have you on to talk about it some more.
Well, if you're interested in understanding the place of conservation and transmission of national and religious traditions in our political world, then I've written a book called Conservatism: A Rediscovery. It's about why the conservative movement doesn't seem to have conserved very much in recent generations, because it hasn't been conservative, obviously. Take a look.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Yoram. We hope to have you back again. And I mentioned my podcast before. In the coming weeks, hopefully we're going to be having Yoram Hazony as a guest on the podcast for a longer form discussion. Make sure to check that out. Thank you once again, Yoram Hazony. We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel right after this.